Hey everyone, welcome back to Political Science 101, American Government and Politics at Simmons College. And I want to start off by apologizing that these videos have been one day late this week. It's been a tumultuous week for everyone, and I have carried on my day job as best as I can, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and you can look at the syllabus supplement and see what's in there. I'm supposed to talk about political parties and such, and I will. I will next week. Right now, I think I would be remiss in my duties as an educator if I did not talk a little bit about the Breonna Taylor situation. And I want to be very candid with you all. I don't have a script or notes prepared for this particular lecture. Because I think it's important to just talk about it. And I really wish to God that we were all in the classroom right now. We could have a discussion. But absent that, I I do want to hear your feedback on this topic. So please comment on the video below. First of all, tell me you watched it. That's how you get your attendance grade. And you get participation grade in this class by asking questions, making comments. And I know I'm behind. A couple of you all have made comments on previous videos that ask questions, and I need to address those. And I will. I'll try to catch up on those next week, and certainly we will be back on the schedule of the syllabus beginning next week. But right now, there's turmoil. There's turmoil in our city. There's turmoil in our country, and I will do my best to comment on it. I don't think I can explain it because I don't want to white-splain these issues. I don't want to condescendingly tell y'all things you already know. I can instead speak as someone who's educated in politics and government, someone who's educated in law. I have a doctorate degree in law, and so I will do my best to break down the situation for you from a formally educated, a textbook educated perspective. But we are living in unusual times. We are living in interesting times. And there's an old, I believe it's a Chinese curse that says, "May you live in interesting times." It's a curse because interesting times are not fun. Interesting times are not times in which you get to go about your business, work hard at your job, take care of your family, take care of yourself, and have a satisfied and fulfilled life. Interesting times are times in which circumstances outside of your control impact your life. And that's where we are right now. But maybe that's just where some of us are right now. Because for about 14% of the American population, the events that have transpired around the murder of Breonna Taylor are not news. They're not unexpected. They're not a surprise. For a smaller percentage of white people who have been following these issues for years, it's almost not a surprise. Um, the undisputed facts of that case are pretty straightforward. The undisputed facts. There are many disputed facts, but the undisputed facts are that three white male police officers executed a legal search warrant, a search warrant that was obtained with probable cause and was signed by a judge. That makes it legal. I'm not saying that makes it right. I'm not saying that's okay. I'm saying that makes it legal. They executed a legal search warrant on an address that they believed had some involvement in drug dealing. Later in the semester, we might get to talk a little bit about whether or not certain drugs should even be illegal in this country, but for now, they are. Um, all narcotics are illegal everywhere in this country, and marijuana is illegal in most states, and other drugs that we could debate may or maybe not should be illegal. We can debate the morality and the ethics of the penalties, the legal penalties that come with possessing and dealing drugs, but they are illegal. The police executed a legal search warrant, or tried to. What is undisputed is that the police knocked on the door, burst into the apartment. A man who was legally residing in that apartment opened fire, struck one of the officers, and all three officers started shooting their guns. That's undisputed. And then the man in the apartment, who was legally in the apartment, was not injured, and his girlfriend, Miss Breonna Taylor, was not only injured but fatally struck by a bullet. According to the Attorney General, there was one bullet that actually caused her death. Now, I think it's a very difficult thing for medical examiners to determine because you don't know the long-term effects of other bullet wounds, but she was struck several times, and at least one bullet caused her death. Those are the facts. Those are facts that are pretty much undisputed. I haven't heard anyone dispute the things that I just said. Now, there are people who say that the police did not announce themselves. There are also people who say that Breonna Taylor and her significant other, Mr. Walker, were engaged in some illegal drug activity. People who say that second thing about the illegal drug activity, I have yet to see any credible evidence that proves that, because these things have not been litigated, and they have not been meted out in a court of law. But other undisputable facts are that 3 white police officers fired their weapons a bunch of times, and their bullets killed Breonna Taylor. One of those officers, the only one facing criminal charges, his bullets from his firearm went through her apartment. They struck a neighbor's apartment where there were 3 people inside, and he's facing 3 criminal charges related to wanton endangerment, which means he recklessly fired his weapon in a way that could have threatened people's lives without reasonably considering that, without being reasonable about where he aimed and fired his weapon. Again, those are facts. Opinions on this topic, I'm not, as your professor, I'm not here to give you opinions. I can give you some more facts, though. Facts like the only criminal charges in this case stem from the bullets that did not hit Breonna Taylor. Facts like, if that police detective's bullets had actually hit Miss Taylor, there wouldn't be any criminal charges right now. I can give you more facts. It is a legal fact that there is no law that could reasonably be used to prosecute the 3 police officers for firing their weapons dozens of times without really aiming at a person. Now, set aside for a moment whether or not anyone should or should not have been shooting at anyone in the apartment. I hope I'm implying how I feel about that without coming out and saying it, but those officers fired their guns without really aiming them, clearly. I am a gun owner. I am not a police officer. I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I am a gun owner. I have been to firing ranges and practice shooting at targets. I have never been in a situation like Mr. Walker or those officers. But I can tell you that if I fired a gun over 30 times, I'd probably hit what I was aiming at. And to fire your guns that many times blindly into someone's apartment, into someone's home, there is no law on the books that you could really convict those officers of anything related to how blindly they fired the guns, except for the officer who's being charged with wanton endangerment. If you're angry about this case, if you're angry and upset, you should be. But you should not be any angrier today or yesterday than you were a week ago or a month ago. Because the system, the laws themselves, are what's preventing any type of murder or homicide indictment for these police officers. If you think that officers should be indicted for homicide because of cases like the Breonna Taylor case, ask yourself what it takes under the law to actually indict people for murder. And the answer is, or not just murder, but any homicide, indict people for any homicide. And the answer is that it has to be like the George Floyd case. If you want to actually indict officers or anyone for homicide, it has to be like that, where the intention, the negligence as well was so clear. It was such a, not only is there a video, but it was such a blatant act of disregard for a human life. I told you I didn't have an outline or any kind of script or anything for this particular lecture, and I gotta say that every time something happens in this country, like what happened yesterday, something like what happened on September 23rd, where there's a case where clearly, police killed a person of color, and most, if not all of them, will be legally exonerated of any wrongdoing, of any crime, and won't spend time in prison. I think about something very disturbing, and it's a specific case and an issue that we were going to talk about later in the semester, and we still will. I think, I haven't checked the syllabus on this topic, but I believe it'll be like October, maybe November, before we get into this topic. But there was a Supreme Court case in the mid-1800s where a man named Dred Scott, who was a slave, sued his owner for his freedom. His grounds for doing so was that the white man who owned him had taken him to a free state. And he said, once I stepped foot in that state, I was free. And so when you brought me back to a slave state, I was still free. I gained my freedom. And he sued for his freedom. The case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And the Chief Justice at the time, we haven't gotten into what that means. The Chief Justice is kind of it's like the executive director of the court. That's not what they call him or her, but that's what that person does. The Chief Justice was a man named Roger Taney, spelled Taney, but pronounced Taney. I mean, to say he was a racist is putting it mildly. I almost said most people back then are racist. Most people now are still racist, but back then it was so blatant. This is a time where slavery was legal in the southern states and the border states like Kentucky and Missouri, Maryland and Delaware, and every state south of there, they had slavery. It was legal. It was wrong. It was brutal. It was morally abhorrent. It was ethically ridiculous, but it was legal. And Chief Justice Taney wrote the opinion of the court. And remember what I said a couple weeks ago on one of these videos, that a court opinion is the law, and a U.S. Supreme Court opinion is the supreme law. It is the interpretation of the Constitution. And again, this is the 1850s. Slavery was still legal. And Justice Taney said, he gave some legal excuses and said, no, Dred Scott is not a free man. He's still a slave. And he could have stopped right there. But if you ever want to be really, really, really outraged, read the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott versus Sandford. Because Justice Taney didn't just stop there. He went on to say that, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but he went on to say that slaves of African descent, they did not have the same legal rights as white people. That the whole case was moot because Dred Scott, a slave, didn't even have the right to file the suit in the first place. What lawyers call standing to sue, meaning you have the legal right to sue someone. Justice Taney thought that he was going to put to rest this question of the rights of slaves and the ability of slaves to function like white people legally in this country. He did not. In fact, he added fuel to the fire that became the United States Civil War, our deadliest war in the history of this country. 700,000 dead people fighting over the question of whether or not one human being can own another human being. Whether or not people of African descent even are human beings, the same as white people. Justice Taney thought they were not. And every time something like the Breonna Taylor case happens, every time it goes down, where a black person is killed by police or anyone, really. Not just police. Sure, police are in the news when they kill black people, but what about the lynchings? This is a modern-day lynching, of course it was, but what about the historic lynchings? What about these mobs of white people just hanging a black person who was randomly accused of a crime? That wasn't that long ago, but it happened a lot. And every time those kind of things happen, I just picture the ghost of Justice Taney saying, see, I told y'all they didn't have the same rights that we have. I told you they weren't held to the same standard under the law. And it's infuriating to me. It's also very sad. But that's where we are in this country today. And I have to say, if you don't like that, if it pisses you off as much as it pisses me off, then please, please, please vote. Vote this year. Find out which politicians are on which sides of these issues and vote. I see that my recording device is frozen again, but please leave your thoughts and comments in the video below on YouTube, and please let me know if you'd like to kind of expand on this topic later in the semester, because we're going to get into some content matter later on this semester as relates to constitutional amendments and so forth that will allow us to expand on this a little bit. So in the meantime, I know we've had over 120 people arrested in Louisville recently. I hope that you're all staying safe. There's nothing wrong with expressing your First Amendment right to free speech, particularly in these times we live in now. And please stay safe. I hope you and your families are safe from COVID-19 pandemic, but also from the very understandable social unrest that's happening in this city right now. That being said, thank you all for watching the video. Don't forget to comment below that you watched it. And next week I will get back on schedule not only with the days of the week, but also with the content of the syllabus. So thank y'all so much for watching this, and please stay safe. I'll talk to y'all on Monday.